Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 3 2016 NFL predictions. Well, this week for the Fanatic, it was more of a down week on both the against the spread and straight up picks. But actually, right now I have more against the spread wins than I did last week. Last week I went 5-11 against the spread. This week I am 6-9, so I did improve by a win. But it was a very frustrating way to end the day on Sunday with the against the spread picks. At one point, through the first 10 games, I did end up going, I believe, 6-4 or 5-4 through the first 9 games. I ended up only winning one of the last 5 or 6 games. So that was very frustrating, but that's what I get for believing that Tampa could put up a fight. San Diego absolutely obliterating Jacksonville and making them look extremely overrated and overhyped. That's kind of what the Jaguars have been for the last couple years, or especially this year. And then, of course, Von Miller stripping Andrew Luck for the turnover touchdown that took the push of the Colts-Broncos game to a Broncos victory. So 6-9 this week against the spread, and overall this year for against the spread, I'm now 11-20, which see here real quick. It's not very good. Let's see. That is 35% against the spread. So I did gain a few points, and I did improve a little bit. But I'm still going to hammer through this against the spread, for the rest of the year. And I hope by the end of the year to at least get 8 to 9 games against the spread right, so I can say for 1 week that I was above 500 or 500 against the spread. Straight up, I did a little bit worse in that category too. Right now, my straight up record for this week is 8-7. So at best, I can do 1 game better, or 1 game worse, than I did last week when I went 10-6. And now overall for the year straight up, I am 18-13, which is 58%. So straight up, I'm feeling better about it. Usually I get 60-63%. That's where I'm going to try to shoot for again. Straight up, there's still a long time to go. We still have 14 weeks to go, so that's going to be very exciting, and I do expect my straight up percentage to go up to that level by the end of the season. And starting with this upcoming week. All right, so everybody, it's time for my picks. So this Thursday, when the 2-0 Houston Texans go to the 2-0 New England Patriots, the Houston Texans are 2.5-point favorites. I'm going to take New England plus 2.5, along with New England straight up. And then on Sunday, September 25th, when the 2-0 Arizona Cardinals go to the 0-2 Buffalo Bills, the Arizona Cardinals are a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to take Arizona minus 4.5, along with Arizona straight up. And then the next game, when the 1-1 Oakland Raiders go to the 1-1 Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Titans are 2-point favorites. I'm going to take Oakland plus 2, along with Oakland straight up. And then in the next game, when the 0-2 Cleveland Browns go to the 0-2 Miami Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins are 7-point favorites. I'm going to take Cleveland plus 7, but I'm going to take Miami straight up. And in the next game, when the 2-0 Baltimore Ravens go to the 0-2 Jacksonville Jaguars, the last time I saw this game, it was a pick'em, so I'm going to take Baltimore against the spread and straight up. And in the next game, when the 1-1 Detroit Lions go to the 1-1 Green Bay Packers, the Green Bay Packers are 8-point favorites. I'm going to take Detroit plus 8, but I'm going to take Green Bay straight up. And in the next game, when the 2-0 Denver Broncos go to the 1-1 Cincinnati Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals are 3.5-point favorites. I'm going to take Denver plus 3.5, and along with straight up. The next game, when the 2-0 Minnesota Vikings go to the 1-1 Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Panthers are 6.5-point favorites. I'm going to take Minnesota plus 6.5, but Carolina straight up. And in the next game, when the 0-2 Washington Redskins go to the 2-0 New York Giants, the New York Giants are 4.5-point favorites. I'm going to take the New York Giants minus 4.5, along with the New York Giants straight up. And then in the next game, when the 1-1 Los Angeles Rams go to the 1-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 5-point favorites. I'm going to take Tampa Bay -5, along with Tampa Bay straight up. And then the next game, when the 1-1 San Francisco 49ers go to the 1-1 Seattle Seahawks, Seattle is a 9.5-point favorite. I'm going to take San Francisco plus 9.5, but I'm going to take Seattle straight up. And then the next game, when the 1-1 New York Jets go to the 1-1 Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs are 3-point favorites. I'm going to take Kansas City -3, along with Kansas City straight up. And then in the next game, when the 1-1 San Diego Chargers go to the 0-2 Indianapolis Colts, the Indianapolis Colts are 2.5-point favorites. I'm going to take San Diego plus 2.5, along with San Diego straight up. And then in the next game, when the 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 2-0 or 1-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 5-point favorites. I'm going to take Pittsburgh -5, along with Pittsburgh straight up. And then in the Sunday night game, when the 1-1 or 0-2 Chicago Bears go to the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys are 4.5-point favorites. I'm going to take Chicago plus 4.5, but Dallas straight up. And then in the Monday night game, when the 1-1 Atlanta Falcons go to the 0-2 New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Saints are 3.5-point favorites. They are 3-point favorites. I'm going to take New Orleans -3, along with New Orleans straight up. And again, for everybody out there that doesn't know my picks, I will put them all in my description. First against the spread, and then straight up. Alright, time for my thoughts on each game. Houston at New England. Boy, this is going to be a fun game to watch. It'll be interesting because Jimmy Garoppolo, after having a sensational first half, or about quarter and a half for the New England Patriots, 22 of 31, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Here's a great little stat for everybody out there to maybe show how bad the Jaguars are. Blake Bortles in his entire NFL career has only thrown 3 first-quarter touchdowns in his entire career. Jimmy Garoppolo did that in 1 quarter. So, just a reminder, Blake Bortles has played in about almost 40 games, about 31 games. He's only scored 3 touchdowns in the first quarter out of those 31 games. Jimmy Garoppolo did that in 1 game. So just a little fun thing out there. But Jimmy Garoppolo was having a good start before this injury. 70% completion percentage, 498 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And now that the Patriots will be relying on Jacoby Brissett, a 3rd-round pick out of North Carolina State. He was part of the Wolfpack. I think he had an 18-14 record, or 14-18 record with the Wolfpack, but he did have 45 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, so he was pretty solid with the Wolfpack. And Russell Wilson was part of that. I'm not saying he's Russell Wilson, but North Carolina State's proven that they can have decent quarterbacks. But also, here's a little fun stat for the Patriots. This is the first time since 1993 that a Bill Belichick coach team is starting 3 different quarterbacks in a single year. You will have, of course, Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jacoby Brissett. Back in 1993, the 3 quarterbacks Bill Belichick started were Vinny Testaverde, Bernie Kosar, and Todd Philcox. And also, when you look at New England, they are 6-1 all-time against the Houston Texans. Even though Houston, they've looked pretty solid over the last couple weeks, especially with the defense. Houston forced 3 turnovers and sacked Smith 4 times. Houston has forced the 5th most turnovers in the league, and they've held opponents to the 3rd fewest yards in the league. And over the last 6 quarters, I believe they have not given up an offensive touchdown. So that's very impressive. With guys like J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, Merciless, Kareem Jackson, Kevin Johnson, Jonathan Joseph, they have a very talented defense. The offense did its part. Lamar Miller had a decent game. Will Fuller, another 100-yard game. Very impressed by him. DeAndre Hopkins made a touchdown, of course, which was big. But the 4 field goals did, that was a concern because at some point they couldn't, get into the end zone. But I'm going to take New England here just because I have to trust Belichick on this one. After the game against Arizona where they were down as much as they were, Arizona has more talent than Houston does. And even though, Jimmy Garoppolo does have that experience, Jacoby Brissett's been in this offense, through all the training camp, through the preseason, through mini camps. So he definitely knows this system, and I think he will do well. And he did okay in relief for Garoppolo when he got hurt. Knowing that he has a few days, that could be a positive and a negative, because again, I guess they don't have to leave home, and also that Houston does not have that much tape on Jacoby Brissett, so we really don't know what he can do. I think this game will be a very competitive game, and I think Houston, out of all the teams that they were playing besides Arizona, they were going to provide the biggest challenge, and I would not be surprised if Houston wins this game. I'm going to take New England just because I look at the roster. You still have Edelman, you still have Amendola. LeGarrette Blount in a fantastic game, 129 yards and a touchdown. James White's being, put in nicely. James Devlin at the fullback has been a great addition to help boost the running game. And I just trust New England just all around as a team that on a short week, they know what they have to do with this team, especially with the quarterback Brissett, more than what Houston will have to prepare for, knowing that they only have half of game of footage on Jacoby to really study him. I think it'll be a great game. It'll be an interesting game. And I wouldn't be surprised if Houston wins, but I'm going to take New England just because I trust the hoodie. 6-1 all time. And usually Belichick, he beats his former assistants, which Bill O'Brien is one of them. So that's why I'm going to take New England to beat Houston. The next game, Arizona at Buffalo. Man, did Arizona take out their aggression in the House of Cards against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 5th time in the last 2 seasons, they have scored 40-plus points, which is most in the NFL. That was incredibly impressive. Jameis Winston committed the most turnovers he's committed in the NFL in his young career. 5, including 4 interceptions. A new career high for him there. Carson Palmer, I do want to congratulate him. He did pass Joe Montana for 16th all-time for passing yards in a career. Of course, Carson Palmer is nowhere near the level of Joe Montana's greatness. And, again, Palmer, has been in the NFL through the passing era. So moving up past Joe Montana really is a lot more inflated than what it should be. But congratulations for him there. And I will say this, Bruce Arians has proven that when he takes his team onto the East Coast, he's done that 9 times. He is 5-4 all time when traveling to the East Coast. So he has proven that he can have a winning record on the East Coast. When you look at Buffalo, they fired their offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, and hired running back coach Anthony Lynn as their new offensive coordinator. I don't really understand that because the Buffalo Bills' problem is not their offense, or not. It definitely wasn't last game. It was their defense. They gave up 37 points. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for the 3rd most yards on a Rex Ryan defense, which I believe was 379. And also, Ryan Fitzpatrick became only the 3rd quarterback in NFL history to have 10-plus completions of 15-plus yards completed in a single game. So when the Ryans, who have been, notoriously known for their defense, give up 37 points and that many yards, I don't understand how the offensive coordinator can get fired, even though his offense was able to put up 24 points, which was double or nearly triple what they put up last week when they put up a grand total of 6. And I think when you look at the Cardinals and Bills, the one thing about the Cardinals is that I believe that their offense just has a lot more talent on it. And they have the deep threats, and they have the receiving threats in Fitzgerald, both Browns, Michael Floyd, Gresham, that they can basically go up and down the field like the Jets did with the talent they have. The running game may be a little bit tougher for them because they don't have Matt Forte, who became the first running back since Curtis Martin in 2000 to get a 100-yard rushing game and to combine that with 3 touchdowns on the road. So kudos to Matt Forte there. And also, I think with the Bills' offense of how they've been going, they are not giving their defense a lot of time to rest. 3 of the Bills' touchdowns in the game last week were less than 90 seconds. So when I look at that, the Bills, they've proven, especially with guys like Goodwin and Watkins and Woods, that they have speed demons, and they have guys that if Tyrod Taylor, who is a spectacular deep thrower, can get bombs, he can maybe burn the Cardinals, for one down the field. It occasionally could happen. It happened, I believe, the last time they were in the East Coast with the Eagles when Sam Bradford threw a bomb to Jordan Matthews. So it can happen. but it really didn't matter because they were down still about 20 points. But I look at it and say, with the Cardinals' talent, knowing that they have their confidence, they're playing a Buffalo team that's in all disarray. They're playing an offense that's now having to learn, I guess, new verbiage and a new identity under the offensive coordinator. And just knowing how Buffalo was at home last time, I just don't have any confidence in Buffalo that against this Arizona team that is ready to prove that they can get on a roll, that they should be able to win this game very easily. Even though history is not on Arizona's side, they have lost 5 of the last 6 games against Buffalo. But I think that will end this. They will win their second out of 7, and that's going to take Arizona minus 4.5, along with Arizona straight up. The next game, Oakland and Tennessee. I have to say this about the Raiders. They spent a lot of money on their defense. $40 million to Sean Smith. They brought in Reggie Nelson from the Cincinnati Bengals. They brought in Bruce Irvin from the Raiders. They drafted Carl Joseph to be on this team. They have Khalil Mack. They have Malcolm Smith. They have a lot of talented defensive guys, but they're not really gelling. In back-to-back years now, they've given up 30-plus points in their first 2 games. They've given up over 800 passing yards of offense and 8 passing touchdowns through the air. And when I'm just looking at that team, I just don't know what it is. It's the fact that maybe it's Drew Brees and Julio Jones that the Raiders can't really beat a top-notch wide receiver or a top-notch elite quarterback. Maybe it's the fact that these guys are getting too old and they're just getting burned. Brandon Cooks, Julio Jones, Justin Hardy got lucky with a catch in the end zone. I will say that wasn't the Raiders' fault there, but it's been one of those things where the Raiders' defense has been just torched and gashed by basically every Saint and every Falcon receiver that they've seen over the last 2 weeks. Tennessee, on the other end, they've been very impressive over their first 2 games. They've only allowed 1 offensive touchdown in their first 2 games. And then Mariota did not have the 3 turnovers, especially the 2 that were returned for touchdowns. I think Tennessee could be 2-0, maybe. And then DeMarco Murray, I have to give him credit because he seems like he's getting back into better form. He rushed for the second highest amount of yards than all he did last week. So to rephrase that, DeMarco Murray ran for, I believe, 89 yards. That was already this year, going in from last year, that was the second highest total we already had. So the fact that he already got that in week 2 showed that he's getting back to form. But the reason why I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders in this one is just that when I look at the New Orleans offense, you have Drew Brees. And when you look at the Atlanta's offense, you have Julio Jones. You have a sensational wide receiver and a sensational quarterback that can, distribute the ball or have a giant playmaker to have the other receivers in Atlanta be effective, especially their tight ends. When I look at Tennessee's offense, they don't have that. Kendall Wright has been out, and Derek Morgan was out the other game. They don't have Justin Hunter anymore. They do have Delaney Walker, who I will say will be a threat. But I just think the Raiders' defense, if they allow Delaney Walker, Tajay Sharp, Kendall Wright if he can play, Andre Johnson, who made a spectacular play to win the game for the Tennessee Titans. If the Raiders allow Johnson and those guys to burn them like that, the Raiders have serious problems. Because there is nobody on that Titans offense, no offense, Keith Bailey, shout out to him, check out his stuff, that really scares you as a quarterback or a receiving core like the Saints and the Falcons have the last couple weeks. But I'd be surprised if Tennessee wins this game? No, because last year this game was incredibly close. It came down to a touchdown to Seth Roberts, I believe, last year to win that game. So these 2 teams can be very competitive, and they both have positives and negatives of either side of the ball. The Oakland Raiders have a spectacular offense, but no defense. The Tennessee Titans have shown that they have a very solid defense, but maybe not one of the greatest offenses. So this is kind of a great even matchup. But I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders here just because I see the ability for the Oakland Raiders corners and defense to finally play a offense, especially receiving core, that doesn't have a big playmaker at the quarterback or receiver position, which has been kind of the downfall of them the last 2 games. Again, it should be a competitive game, should be a close game, but I'm going to take Oakland +2 and straight up just because I think Oakland's defense can do enough to hold up. If they don't, this team may not make the playoffs because their defense would then be the worst in the league, which already kind of is over the last 2 weeks. It's already shown that. So that's why I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders to beat the Tennessee Titans. The Cleveland Browns, the Miami Dolphins. Wow. They talk about an even game. These are two teams that, have shown a lot of awkward promise, but they've been behind pretty much in big spots. First for the Cleveland Browns, another typical Cleveland Brown type of loss. Third largest lead blown in franchise history for the Browns. They were up 20-0 at one point against my Baltimore Ravens, and they ended up blowing that game and losing 25-20. I do want to give credit to Isaiah Crowell, who had an 85-yard rushing touchdown. That was the second longest in Browns history, behind Browns running back Bobby Mitchell's 90-yard touchdown run on November 15th, 1959. And it was the longest run given up by the Ravens defense in our franchise history. So kudos to Isaiah Crowell, but also kudos to the offensive line for providing such a spectacular hole to run through. I have heard today that Josh McCown, who took a beating from the Baltimore Ravens defensive line, his shoulder was in excruciating pain, and they have ruled him out for this game against the Dolphins. So now they're going to be the first team in NFL history to start 3 different quarterbacks in the first 3 games. That is Robert Griffin III, Week 1, Josh McCown, Week 2, and third-round draft pick Cody Kessler from USC. And also, just for a fun fact, in the last 8 games the Cleveland Browns have played going back to 2015, this is their 5th starting quarterback. The other starting quarterbacks were Austin Davis and Johnny Manziel over the last 8 games. So talk about turnaround, talk about dysfunction. That is amazing that the Browns are now starting their 5th quarterback in the last 8 games. I also want to congratulate and give a shout out to Joe Hayden. First time in 2 years that Joe Hayden intercepted a pass. The last time he intercepted a pass was November 30th, 2014 against Buffalo. And then when you look at Miami, they're 0-2 for the first time since 2011. Through that first, half, the Dolphins were getting their tails whipped all the way up and down the field. They were down 14-0, and they ended up going 21-0. And then when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, it changed everything. I do want to give, Tannehill credit for trying his best, even though maybe that you could argue, like I would, that the Patriots kind of let their foot off the gas. And Ryan Tannehill ended up throwing for the most yards, and he scored the most points against the Patriots defense in New England for his entire career. So kudos for him for that. But he did end up losing again, so now he drops to 0-5 against the New England Patriots in New England. And the one thing about the Dolphins, though, is that just kind of like you maybe thought, Jarvis Landry has been the main focal point of the entire offense. Jarvis Landry has double the receptions of every other Miami Dolphin wide receiver or running back. I believe he has 17 receptions. No other Dolphin has 8. So when I look at this game, I think Cleveland, they showed a lot of promise. Corey Coleman had a great game. 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was very impressive. Crowell and Johnson showed that they can be very effective. The Browns defense, Demario Davis had a big game. They still have Hayden. They still have Trevon Williams. They still have a talented team and a fighting team. And they are taking on a Miami team that kind of the same way. They've shown that they've had a lot of promise. They've shown they've had opportunities, such as the game against Seattle when Kenny Stills dropped that 1 touchdown, or when they got the field goal blocked, or when Tannehill got picked off in the end zone this past weekend. They've both shown that they can put up fights and they can be very competitive, but neither one can close the door. But I'm going to take Cleveland here +7 because I think Cody Kessler, I believe he was the most accurate quarterback in college football last year. I think, Hugh Jackson showed a lot with Josh McCown. Cody Kessler, he will be a rookie, so that'll be interesting to see how he does. But I think he has enough talent around him, and he's been in this system the entire year, so he definitely knows how to run this system. But I'm going to take Miami straight up, just because I think at the end of the day, Miami just has more talent around them. And it's also in Miami, so that'll help for home field advantage. And I believe the other times that Tannehill has played the Dolphins, I believe he has won. So Tannehill's never lost to the Dolphins. This Dolphins team has more talent. They've shown that they've been more competitive in both of their games, while Cleveland, for the most part, after the first game, did not look that great, but looked much better in the second. And with that, that's why I'm going to take Miami over Cleveland, but I'm going to take Cleveland's points because I believe Cody Kessler, with what he has around him, can give the Dolphins enough for it to be a 3 to 4 point game. Alright, so that's why I'm taking Miami over Cleveland. The next game, the Jaguars and the Ravens. Man. Jacksonville, what a train wreck of a game. Blake Bortles is now 0-9 all time when he throws for 300 plus yards. That's just a... Well, again, I guess that shows that Blake Bortles, he's not a volume kind of passer. That if he throws for that many yards, it's kind of like Cam Newton. Cam Newton, for the first couple years of his career, when he threw for 300 yards, he really couldn't get that many wins either. But, so it's kind of the same thing. I think if Blake Bortles, if they can get a running game together, he should be able to win more games because there's more of a balance that you have to respect. And then Jacksonville, they also start 0-2 for the fourth time in the last 5 years. I think this is probably the worst start they've had over the last 5 years because this was a team that a lot of people had expectations for. You had a quarterback in Blake Bortles. You had two spectacular wide receivers in Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. You were bringing in Chris Ivory, who I believe should be able to play this weekend against the Ravens. He had a medical injury or a medical condition last week, which forced him out. You brought in guys like Dante Fowler. He was coming back off an injury. You drafted Myles Jack. You drafted Jalen Ramsey. You signed Deshaun Gibson. You signed Prince Amukamara. You have Telvin Smith. You have Cedric Marks. You signed Malik Jackson. You brought in Dante Fowler. You had a very talented young team that has been through a lot, but just watching them play, they just look like they're confused. They can't read assignments well. Blake Bortles is overthrowing 6'7" Julius Thomas. He's throwing 2 more interceptions, and the team just looked beat from Jump Street against the San Diego team that did not either have Danny Woodhead or Keenan Allen in the game. Danny Wood got hurt in that game, but the fact that those two guys weren't on the field and they still look that bad says something to me about the Jaguars. For the Ravens, this was a very good sign for us that this is a different year. The second largest comeback in our franchise's history. The 18-point, the 20-point comeback and an 18-point comeback through the first quarter. And I also want to congratulate Steve Smith Sr., that now is 10th all-time in receiving yards. Very well deserved. What a great player. And also for Dennis Pitta, who gained his second 100-yard game of his career. And it was nice to see him be such a great factor for us due to the fact of all the injuries he's had in the past several years. This series has been very awkward. Jacksonville and Baltimore over the last 5 games have split 2-3. Last year, the Jags got lucky with a botched referee call that should have been called that could have ended the game and given us the victory at our place. So this time, I feel like we should try, to return the favor against the Jacksonville squad that over the last 2 weeks has shown some promise but more disappointment. And this Ravens team, with what we have in Wallace, what we have in Steve Smith, what we have in Brashad Perryman and Kamar Aiken. We have West Forsett is a decent running back duo. We have a great stable of tight ends and a great defense that's been playing without Elvis Dumervil for the first 2 weeks. I'm happy this is a pick'em because I was really scared because I felt confident against the Browns and we almost lost that one. So I'm definitely expecting Jacksonville to put up a fight, but I'm going to take Baltimore here just because we have too much talent and momentum and we have enough experience to go into a place with all of us healthy to win this game, while Jacksonville team, they're going to put up a better fight, but just like they did against Green Bay, or just like they've been most of their time in Jacksonville, they're going to come up short. So that's going to get the Ravens to beat the Jaguars. Packers over Lions. The Detroit Lions, okay, and I know for a lot of people from what I heard, a lot of those calls were ticky-tacky calls. But they ended up acquiring 17 penalties for 138 yards. A few of them were costly penalties. They had touchdowns. I didn't see all of them, but I would say with that many penalties, there probably were a few that didn't go the Lions' way that should have or shouldn't have called. But if you had that many penalties, you aren't probably going to win the game. And then Matthew Stafford, he threw the interception that cost the Lions the game. You know, I was talking to somebody like, oh, but Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback. Over the last 10 games, he's had 23 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And I understand the Lions have been 7-3 in their last 10 games. But to me, the Lions kind of have a Redskins mentality. This is a great stat that I found out. Do you know over the last 2 years, the Detroit Lions have not beaten a team above 500, except one, the Green Bay Packers. Which kind of astonished me that through all the last couple of years, they can't beat a team above 500. Even though for Detroit, this might be a great opportunity to go back into Lambeau, especially after the way the Green Bay Packers played on Sunday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings. Green Bay turned the ball over 3 times, but it should have been 6. There were 3 more offensive fumbles by the Packers, which they were able to recover themselves, which could have put this game in a blowout, in my opinion. But I guess thankfully Green Bay was able to recover those. And also, I do want to say something about Mike McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers did not play a great game. About 213 yards, 2 touchdowns overall, 1 rushing, 1 passing, and the interception. I'm just upset that Mike McCarthy, at about his 10-15 yard line, decided to go for it on 4th and 1 and give it to Eddie Lacy, who only gained 50 yards of ball on the ground, instead of kicking the field goal that could have ended up tying the game. If he kicks that field goal, the Packers probably would have won that game, knowing it was a tie. And that if Trey Waynes picks that ball off, they still have to drive down the field. Again, they would have been in a great position. They probably would have got it anyway. I'm just saying that Mike McCarthy, that was a horrible decision to go for it on 4th and 1 at that point of the game. Because you didn't need to. And also, you're not that kind of risk taker most of the time. But I'm going to take Green Bay here because even though that the 24-game streak is over, it still is a fact that the 24 of the last 25 meetings at Lambeau, the Green Bay Packers have won. This is an angry Green Bay team that knows they should have been able to or should have probably beaten the Minnesota team that was playing a 2-week starting quarterback in Sam Bradford that's in his 3rd offense, and he's learned his 3rd offense in less than a year. And this Detroit team, they've shown with the Indy game that their secondary is not that great and their defense is not that great. When you're at home with Aaron Rodgers, who is spectacular and almost unstoppable at home, I just think it's a great combination of frustration, talent, and motivation for the Green Bay Packers to go into Detroit, for the Detroit Lions to go into Green Bay and take another pretty convincing butt whipping to start another streak for the Packers of how many times they beat Detroit in Lambeau. I think it should be a great game of how Green Bay's been playing, and like I said, over the last 2 years, Green Bay's the only team Detroit's beaten above 500. I'm going to give Detroit plus points because I think it's 8 points, and I think Detroit can make it a 1-score game. Last year, both those games came within 3 points. If one wasn't for a Hail Mary, and the other one was for a missed field goal. But I'm going to take Green Bay straight up because this Packers team is just more talented. The Detroit defense has shown that they can't do anything, and they also lost Amir Abdullah to a foot injury, which will be big because D.R. Riddick is predominantly a pass-catching back, which means that the Lions do not have to worry about a running game. But that's why I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers over the Detroit Lions. Broncos and Bengals. The 5 straight years the Denver Broncos started 2-0. Longest streak in the NFL currently. And also I do want to give the Denver's defense credit. 2 defensive touchdowns in the same game for the first time since 2003. The Denver Broncos with a key to Leafs pick 6. And Shane Ray's fumble recovery for a touchdown after Von Miller stripped the ball out of Andrew Luck's hands. Trevor Siemian, I believe this is true. I believe he is the first quarterback in NFL history to win his first 2 games against 2 number 1 overall picks in his first back-to-back games. Look, Andrew Luck and Cam Newton, Trevor Siemian didn't really wow any people, and again, he ended up throwing for 280 yards. Not bad for yards, but he ended up throwing no touchdowns and an interception, and he has 1 TD and 3 interceptions for the year, so that's not great. But I'm going to take Denver here just because Cincinnati just cannot run the ball. Jeremy Hill in 2 games has carried the ball 20 times. He's got 53 yards. And Giovanni Bernard, even though he led the team yesterday against the Steelers in receiving, he ended up catching 10 balls for 100 yards. He only has 10 carries for 53 yards. So even though DeMarcus Ware, who broke his forearm, should be out 4 to 5 weeks, he is having surgery. Best of luck to him. That will be a blow. I just feel confident that Denver's defense can do a great job against this this Cincinnati running attack to make them one-dimensional. And I think Aqib Talib or Chris Harris can hold their own against A.J. Green. And here's an interesting thing about A.J. Green, that in 3 of the last 5 games, he's been held under 40 yards receiving. I do believe he will get over 40 yards against Talib or Harris, just knowing how desperate the Bengals need to get this win. But I do think he won't get 100, which will definitely hamper the Bengals' chances, because besides Tyler Boyd, I really can't name another receiver, and Tyler Eifert will not be out there, which is big for the Broncos, knowing that they don't have to worry about that threat. And also, Cincinnati has lost 5 of the last 6 games against the Denver Broncos. I believe the last time out of those 6 games, the one time the Bengals won was a Monday night game in 2014, I think Week 16, where Drake Kirkpatrick picked off Manning to win that game. And then last year, of course, McCarron gets stripped by gets stripped and gets recovered by DeMarcus Ware, and the Broncos win that one. So I'm going to take Denver in this game, plus 3.5 and straight up, just because I don't trust Cincinnati to get a really great running game going. It's shown in the first 2 weeks, and this Denver defense, even without DeMarcus Ware, can stuff up that run game enough. And I think Trevor Siemian can make enough plays, again, where either the defense can get one more stop or Siemian can make one more play to get a game-winning field goal or position the Broncos to get a rushing touchdown to win this game. This should be a very physical game between two, motivated teams, one going in a positive direction with 7th-round pick, and a desperate team that knows that falling 1 and 2, especially with losses to the Broncos and Steelers, for their overall confidence, will be a problem. I'm going to take Denver here. They're going to be able to stop Cincinnati's running game, and that will force Andy to have to rely more on A.J. And even though A.J. Green will have a better game than he did yesterday, it still won't be a great enough game and a big enough game for the Bengals to win this game. So that's why I'm taking Denver over Cincinnati. Carolina and Minnesota. 7 straight games for the Carolina Panthers at home where they scored 30-plus points. And Carolina's forced the second most turnovers in the NFL with 6. Carolina has been very impressive. Greg Olsen scored the longest TD of his career, 75 yards. I believe that Cam Newton, the Panthers have also won 10 straight games at home, which is the longest active streak in the NFL for that. So, but they are playing a Minnesota team, and this pains me to say this, because anybody out there that knows me knows that I'm not the biggest Sam Bradford fan. You could say that Sam Bradford kind of grates me just about how he plays and his ability. But I do have to say this, that was probably, last night, the best game of Sam Bradford's entire career from start to finish. That was the first game in his career in 65 tries, or 65 tries. They had 2 touchdowns, completed 70% or more of his passes, and no interceptions. He outplayed Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't even close. It was kind of an amazing thing to see, because I thought Aaron Rodgers played that game against Sam Bradford. And this wasn't even without a running game with Adrian Peterson going out with a torn meniscus. Mike Zimmer said that he might play. I would not do that because Adrian Peterson's too valuable, and if he rips up his knee more, especially with his age at 31, that could be almost career-ending or definitely career-changing for the future of Adrian Peterson. Even though, again, Adrian Peterson, he's got the lowest amount of yards in the first 2 games of his career with only 50. So there's definitely something not right there. But now at least AP has the thing where everybody will understand if he's not doing that well because he's running on a torn meniscus. I also want to congratulate Stephon Diggs, 3rd receiver in Vikings history to have 100-plus receiving yards in the first 2 games of a season. The other 2 guys that ended up doing that were Chris Carter and Gene Washington back in 1969. And when I look at this game, I'm going to take Carolina just because Minnesota's offensive line, okay? I do believe that about half of the blame for the rough start for AP is on his, ability to run and get through cuts, but the other half is on this offensive line, which has been absolutely atrocious. Mike Daniels for the Packers was beating the Vikings tackles like a drum. And, I almost felt that with Bradford, I was surprised his hand didn't just break because of how many times he was getting hit. And knowing what the Panthers have in their front seven with Kawan and Luke and Thomas, that's going to be even a harder test to deal with. Also, I think that you saw that with Cam that he has a bigger receiving threat. The tight end threat has to be more accounted for. But the running games are about a wash. I will say that because of Jonathan Stewart being out for the next couple weeks of an ankle injury himself. So, but both defenses are spectacular. If I was doing an over/under on this game, I would definitely tell you to take under, just because these are two almost top 5 defenses. Where Minnesota's weakness, you could argue, is kind of Carolina's. I think Carolina has a better front seven than Minnesota does, so it kind of evens out at the end. But at the end of the day, I just feel that Cam Newton will be able to make more plays with his legs, and Sam Bradford won't nearly have as good a game because he's either going to get pressured a lot more, hit a lot more, or just throw an interception that will cost the Vikings the game, or that may cost them the game. This should be a very old school, hard-nosed defensive battle. I'm going to take Minnesota plus 6.5 because I trust their defense to make this a old school black and blue type of game. But Carolina just has too much talent, and I think if Green Bay's front seven could get through to Sam Bradford the way it did, Carolina will do a much better job and a more effective job, which will be the difference in Sam Bradford being able to make all those timely throws and be as effective as he was. So that's what I'm taking Carolina to beat Minnesota. Let's see. The next game is the Redskins and the Giants. The first time since 2012 and 2013 that the Washington lost their first 2 games at home, and for the first time since 2013 they started 0-2. I do want to give the Giants defense a lot of credit. I believe they spent the most money in the entire offseason on their defense, $200 million in guaranteed dollars, and they've only given up 2 TDs through the first 2 games, and that's what that defense has gone through. In fact, I believe yesterday the only touchdown that was scored by the Giants was by Jenkins on the blocked field goal. So great job for them. However, I do want to mention 2 Giant fans that in the last 6 quarters there have been over the last 6 quarters the Giants have scored 1 touchdown. And with this offense, with Odell, Victor, and Sterling Sharp, and Donnell, and an okay running game, I think the running game's been underwhelming. That's kind of a little concerning that over the last 6 quarters, only 1 offensive touchdown. Even though the defense, they've only given up 1 offensive touchdown, so it's kind of an equal thing, where spectacular job out of defense. Steve Spagnuolo has enough talent to coach them to be a top defense. But this offense here at the same time, only 1 offensive touchdown in the last 6 quarters. So that would be something I would watch. But I'm going to take the Giants here pretty easily, just because I've seen the Redskins and their defense can't do anything. Des Bryant had 108 yards. Cole Beasley was making plays. Dak Prescott looked spectacular. He went about 22 of 30, 278 yards, and a rushing touchdown. And like the Redskins' defense at 29, Kirk Cousins, he has done horrible against the New York Giants in his career. He has only 1 win against the Giants. He's never beaten them in New York. And he has 55% completion, 1,044 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions in his career against the Giants, which is pathetic. And with the way he's been playing, he may be able to put up more yards. Again, he's put up over 300 yards in the first couple games. But by that point in the game, it was garbage time, and he was just kind of dinking and dunking his way to get more yardage. And just of how the Giants are, I think that he won't be able to get 300 yards. And their defense, even if Josh covers 1 guy, I don't think Victor Cruz can beat their 3rd corner, or Sterling Shepard could beat their 2nd corner. Who knows? I think the Giants' offense and defense has a lot more to have to handle with for the Redskins than the Redskins' defense does for the Giants, especially with how effective Des Bryant was and Cole Beasley. I could see similar or even better games from Shepard and Beckham or even Victor Cruz. This game should be a decisive win because I think the Redskins they're bickering between themselves now. Kirk Cousins has lost some of the trust in their locker room, which is always a no-no for team unity and team success. And I think that will translate into another horrific loss for the Redskins against the Giants. Should be an interesting game because I think Cousins he's played this team enough now. He definitely knows how to play them. But I think at the end of the day, the Giants win this game just because they have much better overall defense. Eli Manning doesn't make that many mistakes, and the Giants just have a better overall team. So that's what I'm thinking, the Giants to beat the Washington Redskins. The Rams and the Bucks. Congratulations to the LA Rams. First win in LA since November 6, 1994. However, I do want to say this. The LA Rams, the new LA Rams, or the reincarnated LA Rams, still have not scored an offensive touchdown in the NFL since they've been back. 3 field goals. And yet they're 1-1. That is amazing. Todd Gurley, I think, has about 100 yards of offense in the first 2 games. Which, that's definitely not the start he's been getting through, but with how the Rams' offense has been, essentially, I think you kind of have to give Gurley some slack, because essentially he is the entire Rams' offense. And also, I do want to congratulate Case Keenum. He became the first QB in the Jeff Fisher era to beat the Seattle Seahawks in consecutive games. And when I look at this game, it's essentially an even matchup of where Tampa has a sensational offense, or they have the offensive talent, even though, like I said earlier, that was not the case against the Arizona Cardinals. It was a very, sloppy, turnover-filled, non-offensive moving game for the Bucs. And also, but there was a big injury early in the game. Doug Martin went down with an injury, and I believe he did not come back. So that was big for the Bucs because Doug Martin's a great, spark plug in the passing and running game for the Bucs to have balance. But I'm going to take the Bucs here just because the Bucs defense has enough talent to stop the Rams offense, right? Like, you're playing an offense, again, that's only scored 9 points in 2 games. You have Gerald McCoy. You have Quan Alexander. You have Levante David. You have Brent Grimes, Vernon Hargraves. Algeron Werner, I believe, is still there. You have Noah Spence. You have a very talented defense. And you're playing, if you can stop, Todd Gurley enough, and you have good enough corners on both sides to give Kenny Britt and Tavon Austin fits. So, I think Tampa's defense has enough talent and basically enough defensive categories for their offense to take over. And they have the offensive talent, unlike Seattle's, where maybe, Charles Sims, he could do okay. And then, Doug Martin, if he's able to come back, that'd be big. He should be able to run through the Rams' defensive line better than Rawls and Michael did. And I just think Tampa Bay, just defensively, has enough defensive talent to get the Rams possibly, maybe the first team in NFL history, to go the first 3 games of the year without scoring an offensive touchdown, which is amazing. Again, would I be surprised if the Rams won? I would be a little bit, but if the Rams defense can play like they did, and Tampa Bay does have an inexperienced line, they can give the Rams fits. And also, I think the Bucs have lost the last 2 games against the Rams in this series. But I'm going to take Tampa Bay here just because I trust their defense enough to say we can do the same thing the Seahawks did and we do the same thing the Niners did. Just because you are that limited offensively. If you take out Todd Gurley, you can maybe make some throws, but our corners can hold enough against Austin and Britt that you can't really move the ball. And we have Evans and Jackson and Jenkins and Jameis Winston, and we'll be able to throw the ball more effectively to get points. So that's what I'm taking Tampa -5 over the Rams. San Francisco and Seattle. The San Francisco 49ers scored 27 points in their first 2 games. They scored more than 27 points in only 1 game last year. So, amazing as this sounds, I will give Chip Kelly a lot of credit. He's provided his team a spark on offense that they can, put up a decent amount of points. And if they're playing an offensive line or a defensive line as a challenge, they can be a lot more competitive than I thought. Even though Blaine Gabbert had a few fumbles, but also the Niners forced a few turnovers themselves, so kudos to them. And then you have Seattle, who has the second worst offense in the entire NFL, and the fact that they've only scored one offensive touchdown in the first 2 games. Russell Wilson was the longest active quarterback with a streak of throwing a touchdown in a game in 17 games. That was snapped yesterday. And, you know, I'm going to take Seattle here just because they're at home. And I just kind of feel like they have to get their offense going. Like, I mean, like, you can lose to the Rams. Fine, like I said. You've lost 4 of the last 5 times. And now Case Keenum, you know, has beaten you 2 times in a row. You know, you've lost 4 of the last 5. And the Rams just always seem to have a great defensive front to beat up your, you know, inexperienced offensive line. The Niners have defensive talent, but their defensive line is nowhere near the level of the Rams is right now. And I just think Seattle, you know, they can run it better. Stewart did a decent game. Russell Wilson can throw it better because, you know, besides Kelvin Benjamin, which the Seahawks obviously don't have, but they have enough receivers that they can make plays, even though hopefully Doug Baldwin is healthy. But I'm going to take the Niners plus 9.5, just because I feel like the Niners are just going to mess around in this game, and their offense will get going, or they might be like Tannehill, where they're, you know, being able to make a play or get a touchdown to pull in 3, but then Blaine Gabbert throws an interception, or a pick happens, or, you know, some crazy thing that Seattle gets lucky by happens and they win the game. It should be an interesting game because I think San Francisco has the momentum compared to Seattle. Kind of amazing. But I'm going to take the Seahawks here just because they're at home and they have to do something against this Niners defense. Because if they don't, then I have serious problems with the Seattle team and they might not make the playoffs if they can't score on anybody through 3 games. So that's what they can see. San Francisco plus 9.5, but Seattle straight up. Kansas City and the Jets. Kansas City had the 11-game winning streak, longest in the NFL. That was over yesterday when they lost to the Houston Texans. And it was the second time in the last 2 years the Kansas City offense could not find the end zone. The other time that happened was, I believe, Week 5 when they played the Cincinnati Bengals, and they lost 36-21, and Cairo Santos kicked 7 field goals. This series is even, where they've played 35 games. Each team has won 17, and there's also been a tie. Like I said before about Fitzpatrick and Forte, very impressive games. 3rd most yards against the Rex Ryan defense. And Matt Forte became the first running back with 100 yards and 3 touchdowns on the road since Curtis Martin in 2000. And also, I do want to give a shout out to Marcus Peters. 10th interception in the last 2 seasons. That leads the NFL. I'm going to take KC here just because the one big X factor that I did not mention was Jamal Charles. I think having him back in the offense in terms of passing and running, if you combine him with Spencer Ware and Charkandrick West, that's a tremendous backfield to help spread the ball around and keep the Jets on balance. Even though KC's lost 3 of the last 4 games against the Jets, they did win the last one. And I just think it's something where Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know, I think he's going to struggle against the Chiefs defense. They have a good enough pass rush to get to Fitzpatrick, and when Fitzpatrick is under duress, he struggles a lot, or he struggles more often than not. And then Alex Smith, he wants to bounce back from a rather mediocre to pedestrian game by his standards, and I think he does that with a quality win over a motivated Jet team that knows that essentially this might be their easiest game left over the next few weeks because they have Arizona and Pittsburgh and Seattle coming up in the next 3 weeks. So that's what I'm taking Kansas City -3. Indy and San Diego, 3rd straight season where they started 0-2, longest streak for them since they were 0-2 in 6 consecutive years from 1985 to 1991. Andrew Luck has had no help from his running game. I don't know if anybody knows this or people should know. Andrew Luck in his career only has one 100-yard rusher in any of his games, which is amazing. San Diego's quarterback Phillip Rivers has threw and tied a career high with 4 passing touchdowns, and first time in 2 years that Melvin Gordon and Travis Benjamin each had 100 yards for the San Diego Chargers. San Diego's won 6 of the last 7 games against the Colts, including, I believe, the one meeting of Andrew Luck, which I think ended 19-9, and they've won 3 straight. And I'm going to take San Diego here just because there's something about Indy's defense that I'm just not sold with. And seeing what Jacksonville's defense looked like, I think Indy's defense, that's a hard, low bar to follow. But I think Indy's defense is not that much better. Cromartie had an injury. You still have Robinson out. Vontae Davis is still out. This secondary with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, it may get lit up again because you have Tyrell Williams, you have Dontrell Inman, you have Travis Benjamin. Melvin Gordon's been doing a sensational job, and the Colts have been pretty okay at the running game, but not great. And I just think San Diego, they have a lot of confidence, and they have Phillip Rivers going into a place that he knows how to win there, or he knows how to win against these teams. And I just think that San Diego, even though they don't have Danny Woodhead or Keenan Allen, they'll be able to find a way to win this game because either Andrew Luck will turn it over, or San Diego will be able to make one more throw on this very injury-plagued secondary. So that's what I'm taking San Diego to beat Indianapolis. Pittsburgh over Philadelphia. Ben Roethlisberger, 3 straight games with 3 touchdowns or more. That ties, I believe, Terry Bradshaw with the most consecutive games with 3+ TDs. But Ben Roethlisberger, in 4 of his last 5 games, he has thrown 2 or more interceptions. Amazingly, though, the Steelers won this game with their best, offensive threat, Antonio Brown, the best wide receiver in football. He had the second lowest amount of receiving yards, with, I believe, 39 in the last 3 seasons of his career. That's amazing. The Bengals were able to do that kind of job on him. And D'Angelo Williams, the 33-year-old running back, has about over 200 yards on the ground, and he's still getting a very high workload. 33 carries, a career high for him. And they're playing a Philadelphia team that, when I look at Philadelphia, they look good. I think that they have confidence. They'll be at home. This series has been very up and down for both teams. I just think Pittsburgh, in every asset of the game, has just better talent and the better area. Maybe besides, even the front. I'll give Pittsburgh that. I think Philadelphia, a great game for them would be a competitive game, a 1 to 10 point game. That'd be a great message for the Eagles fan base that against a Super Bowl contending team, the second best team in the AFC, in my opinion, they almost won. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh here just because they just have too much talent and better talent in every way on the team. So that's one thing. Pittsburgh over Philadelphia. Dallas over Chicago. Dak Prescott's thrown 75 passes without an interception, most by any QB in his first 2 games since Warren Moon. Dallas now has beat Washington 4 straight times in Washington. And this game, it's interesting. Dallas is not a great home team. They don't win that often at home for some odd reason. I couldn't find the time to compile the Jerry Jones record at home, but it's way worse than when the Cowboys actually go on the road, so that's a positive for the Bears. But I'm going to take Dallas here just because I'm liking what Dak's doing. Okay, I was kind of hard on him because how much he didn't do. He did a lot more last week. Even though he didn't throw for an offensive touchdown, he did end up, winning the game and putting up 290 yards. And, getting a win like that with how effective he was, no interceptions, that's impressive. In Chicago, I'm not sold on their defense, their offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys made a big play in the red zone when they picked off Kirk Cousins. And I just think Dallas, when you look at them, they're in the better spot. They have the better line. They have a better line to go against for the defense. And I just think Dak Prescott will be smooth and steady, and that'll be the biggest difference against the erratic Jay Cutler, that he can make a great throw, he can make, a drive, but he'll end up throwing in 1 or 2 picks in a game that end up costing the Bears the game. So that's what I'm thinking, Dallas over Chicago. And finally, Saints over Falcons. Matt Ryan threw for the second most yards on the road in his career. Congrats for him on that. 386, I believe. And Drew Brees passed Dan Marino for 3rd most time in NFL history. The reason why I am taking the Saints is this. I saw that they had a defense. The Saints defense did not give up a touchdown on offense and a +3 turnover differential, and they still lost the game. The last time it happened was the 06 Cardinals when they played the Bears in the famous we are who we thought they were game. But I'm going to take New Orleans here because I saw they had a defense and they're at home. And I feel like with that combination, they should win. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube prognosticators page. Shout out to guys like Billy B, Hatbox, Keith Bailey, Mason Cole, Juno. Check him out on the page. Let's see. Who am I forgetting here? But check out all the NFL YouTube prognosticators. They're great people. They make great videos like I do, and they have great predictions themselves. So that's it. So until next week, this is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, signing off. Till then, so long.